Good morning to all arts managers here with us today. Once again, I am Ami Ramolete, Vice Chair of the AUNCA, welcoming you back to Crosslight online learning sessions. And just like that, we're on week 3. Last week, we learned the basics of arts management as well as empowerment of artists during the new normal. We were given an overview of culture and arts management from Ms. Julie Kim Davis and Malaya Del Rosario from the British Council. We learned about strategic management from the Cultural Center of the Philippines, Mr. Chris Miliado. Moreover, how he created innovative productions during the pandemic. Finally, we learned about artist management and development from National University of Singapore's Miss Mary Law and how they are trying to work out the training and productions given the mobility issues and social distancing measures set by the government. And as promised, we are picking up from last week with not just one, but 2 parallel online sessions. In this Zoom room, you'll be hearing from educators from different artistic fields about how their teaching methods responded to the circumstances, how they struggled, and how they innovated. They will also generously share how their practices evolved altogether during this time. Please do take note that aside from having 2 sessions happening simultaneously, we'll also be deviating from the usual sequence this week. Since our first speaker comes from a different time zone, we'll be conducting his open forum after his lecture. So as you listen, please prepare to type your questions for that speaker in the Zoom chat box. Clear? All right, let's get the ball rolling. Our first speaker is a proud Aklanon, multi-hyphenate, who scored coasts and countries in North America to complete his training. After obtaining his PhD in California, he's now based in Toronto, Canada, where he is now incoming chair and associate professor in York University's Department of Dance. He has received distinctions from the Government of Ontario, namely the President's University-wide Teaching Award and Early Researcher Award. In 2014, he also won the Selma Jean Cohen International Dance Scholarship Competition from the Fulbright Association of America. Here to tell us about the online pedagogies in dance, please welcome artist, ethnographer, and documentarian Dr. Patrick Alcedo. Dr. Alcedo will be with us for his open forum immediately after his lecture. For now, please watch this.
Hello. For this presentation, I thought that the best way to show you how I have responded as a dance educator, dance artist, dance ethnographer, and documentary filmmaker is to share with you a couple of my works since last year before the COVID-19 pandemic erupted and until the present. I thought that comparing and contrasting my works before and during the pandemic would illustrate my own journey in being what I call adaptively nimble in this period in our history that is unprecedented and overwhelmingly global. The pandemic is a reminder of the importance of liveness in performative acts and of being consistently present physically in an ethnographic endeavor. Indeed, this global upheaval has turned upside down our lives as artists, scholars, educators, researchers, and arts administrators, and has dramatically altered and even halted the ways in which we now perform dance, theater, music, etc. Just this May 28th, the Bayanihan, the Philippines National Dance Company, culminated its first ever 2-week sayaw or dance workshop online to children and dance enthusiasts. In a June 8 interview via Zoom call, Susie Benitez, Bayanihan's executive director, stated that the online technology has made it possible for workshop participants from Manila and Cebu and from Sydney, Australia and Toronto, Canada, diasporic places with high concentration of Filipino immigrants in complete opposite on the global hemisphere with markedly different time zones to come together to learn folk dances from the Bayanihan. That workshop made it possible for the attendees and their teachers, core members of Bayanihan, who before the pandemic would trot the world representing the Philippines in dance festivals, to form a temporary virtual dance community. I was one of the participants of that workshop, and for me to be part of that online community, I had to wake up at 3 in the morning here in Toronto to make it to the 3:30 class in Manila. Boy, that was quite something. But it was definitely worth it. However, Susie Benitez added that synchronous learning, which she terms as flexible, cannot be on a par with performing dances face to face, embodying them side by side with each other and gaining tacit knowledges through the very act of dancing and making present one's non-digital body to perform with others. Of course, I agree that the body to body interaction is irreplaceable in transmitting an expressive culture such as dance, and the production of cross-cultural discourses for a dance ethnographer such as myself is about being there in situ, borrowing from Sarah H. Davis and Melvin Koner. I would agree, however, that due to the totalizing effect of the pandemic and its duration, the way we understand, practice, research, disseminate, and teach dance will inevitably change, and they already are, as evidenced by this conference. To juxtapose the liveness and the virtual in my works and the implications of their difference in teaching dance moving forward, let me share with you a 15-minute lecture I did for York International and the UNESCO Chair in Reorienting Education Towards Sustainability on June 21, for their virtual conference that reimagined teaching in higher education in this era of global uncertainties. In this lecture, you will see the liveness of my work pre-pandemic through a dance concert I directed in 2017, and a documentary film, an ethnographic research, and an artistic directorship I did in Spain, and a lecture demonstration I did for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, all in 2019. I end this lecture with an excerpt of my brother's choreography for his Master's in Fine Arts degree in dance at York University that he created, taught, and executed entirely via Zoom call. I end with a short documentary about the life of a 15-year-old girl who lives alone in an urban poor district in Manila, in an area called Novaliches, and struggles to survive as a high school student and a ballet dancer. The dissemination, along with the post-production of this film, have entirely been online, although the film's production was obviously face-to-face. So please take a look at this 15-minute lecture that I did in January. Welcome to my presentation entitled Philippine dance as an international pedagogical tool. My name is Patrick Alcedo. I am an associate professor in the Department of Dance here at York University, and I introduced Philippine dance, Philippine folk dance, when I joined the faculty in 2008. So I'm very excited to share with you materials around Philippine dance and also my documentary filmmaking. So a little bit about me in terms of context. Before moving to Canada, I was actually a member of the University of the Philippines Filipiniana Dance Group in Manila. That's where I received my university education, and this is an internationally touring group that represents the country. My training in Philippine folk dance for many years. Even when I moved to Manila, I grew up in the central Philippines, in a town called Kaliba, Aklan. Even there, when I was growing up, I was already performing a lot of Philippine folk dances. So my training in Philippine folk dance allowed me to impart my knowledge of this form that I'm very passionate about. And in 2017, I actually had the good fortune of directing and also helping choreograph and reconstruct dances around Philippine dance. The concert was called Luz Viminda. It was a big undertaking. By the way, Luz Viminda is a portmanteau that stands for the three major islands of the Philippines: Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And thanks to the Canada Council for the Arts, the Toronto Arts Council, and York University, and the Department of Dance of York University, I was able to do this major concert participated in by Filipinos and also non-Filipinos. So really, it was a very inclusive and diverse event. So let's take a look at this concert. We packed everything in less than 2 minutes. So you'll have as many dances as that you'll see as possible. So let's take a look. Folk dance in Canada, specifically in the Greater Toronto area, and I conducted research on this dance form using the lens of immigration for 5 years. One of the groups that I focused on is called Culture Philippines of Ontario, and this is a group based in Mississauga. And in 2019, as part of my training for the students, I was able to join and also support the travel of 4 undergraduate and graduate students to go to Spain when Culture Philippines of Ontario participated in 2 international dance festivals where they represented both Canada and the Philippines. And this was a milestone in my early researcher award. And one of the pieces, and while I was there as a researcher, as an ethnographer, I was also the artistic director of the Culture Philippines of Ontario. And so I helped them put on stage and mount and reconstruct the dances in the repertoire. One of the dances that I really loved from the repertoire is called Hota Panderetas, or the dance of the tambourines, using tambourines. And this is from the Bayanihan National Philippine Dance Company, and the group learned this from Eno Mezcaliado, who served as their artistic director and choreographer for many years. So it was an honor for me to help restage this for the group when they went to Spain. And so here's Jota Panderetas, quite a popular piece when we went to Spain to participate in those two international dance festivals. So here's Jota Panderetas. Also in 2019, to end my early researcher award, I was invited by York's Vice President for Research and Innovation to a project to join the project called CRAM, which stands in for Communication Research and More. And this is a collaboration of the Vice President for Research and Innovation and CBC. And I want to share with you actually a clip from Breakfast Television where Mary Ito of CBC introduces CRAM and mentions the participation of Philippine dance in this major event that opened the doors of universities to the public. To show what research is being conducted in the different universities across Toronto. So here's Mary Ito in Breakfast Television.
York, for example, they've got this really cool dance demonstration. I mean, when you think of research, you normally may not think of dance, right? But Patrick Alcedo is a first-generation Filipino. I didn't realize this, but Filipino, the immigrant population, is the fastest growing one in Canada. I didn't know this. And so he's done years of research looking at how Filipinos have made their home in the world. And he looks at the diaspora here, and then he conveys his research through a dance performance using 25 dancers and musicians. He's showing his award-winning documentary and also giving a talk. So I found that really cool.
Yeah. And while I am a dance ethnographer, dance researcher, I'm also a documentary filmmaker. And just like what Mary Ito has said, I actually showed one of my documentary films called Dancing Manileños. And modesty aside, this film was an official selection at the Diversity in Cannes Short Film Showcase in 2019. And here's a trailer of Dancing Manileños that intersects dance with with social justice issues, and this is one of my passions in terms of research, is to really bring about is to throw light on issues around poverty and inequality. So here's Dancing Manileños.
Well, lumaki ako dito. Lumaki ako sa environment na to. masaya naman ako sa buhay ko. Hindi naman ako naiinggit na maging mayaman whatsoever. Natutuwa akong galing ako sa hirap. Natutuwa ako na pinagdadaanan ko to. Kasi alam ko dito ako nag-grow. Dito ko mas nakikilala yung sarili ko. Dito ko mas nakikilala ang mundo na ginagalawan ko.
Lahat ng pwede ko ibigay sa iyo, ibibigay ko yan. Hindi ko ipagdadamot yan. Paghirapan natin together. You know, mahihirapan ka, mahihirapan ako para iparating yun. Pero sabay natin gawin. Tingnan natin kung ano mangyayari.
Kung tatanungin now, why ballet? Honestly, ito lang kasi yung, for now, ito pa lang yung alam ko. Ito pa lang yung alam ko.
And if you want to watch the entire film, I actually submitted a YouTube link to the website for this event. So I hope you'll find the time to watch that entire film. And before I end, I actually want to show you just to talk a little bit about what are the future plans for Philippine dance. So if not for the COVID-19 pandemic, we would have launched the Philippine folk dance in Manila this summer, and for students to actually go to the school that is the focus of Dancing Manileños, the school for underprivileged children, for students coming from Canada, from York University, to experience what it means to actually fight poverty and inequality and being disadvantaged through dance. So I'm very excited to launch this for the first time in 2020, in summer of 2022, and hopefully it's possible to travel to Manila by that time. And I also, before I end, I want to share with you a piece that I find inspiring, not because the choreographer is my brother, but I think this is a great piece. He is an MFA student in dance, and my brother Paolo was able to find a way to actually choreograph and mount a thesis during the pandemic, teaching this dance, rehearsing the dancers, creating the choreography, all through Zoom. And here's a sample of his piece called In Flight, and it is an inspiration of movements or motifs that are flying, that are traveling, called from Philippine folk dance resources. So the issues of immigration and diaspora are very much present here. So let's take a look at this piece. thank you so much. And if you want to get in touch with me or have questions or want to have a conversation, you may reach me at Alcedo, that's ALCEDO, at yorku.ca. So thank you. In Tagalog, maraming salamat po.
Years na po akong nagbabalay sa Quezon City Performing Arts po. Doon po sa pagsasayaw na yan, mapofocus ko po yung sarili ko doon. Bukod sa pag-aaral, tsaka doon sa pagsasayaw na yun, nabubuhos ko po lahat ng emosyon ko, lahat ng gusto kong iparating sa ibang tao. Doon ko po nabubuhos lahat. Sobrang hirap po kasi pagod ka na po sa practice tapos may halos isang buong oras ka po pong gugugulin mo po yung oras ng biyahe. Syempre po, imbis na nagpapahinga ka na lang po, magbabiyahe ka pa, upo ka pa na sa loob ng isang oras. Tapos doon mo po mararanasan lahat ng pagod, doon mo mararamdaman na kahit na ganun kahirap, basta gusto mong sumayaw. Gagawin mo lahat. Tapos pag kunwari po, umulan na po, ako lang po yung hindi ko na po iintahin yun. Kasi minsan po, sobrang pagod. Tapos pag naswerte naman po na may nakasabay ka na napayungan ka, magpapasalamat na lang din po. Yun, pag ganun po, kahit pa paano, mababawasan po yung nararamdaman ko. Tapos po, dito po sa bahay na to, pagdating naman po sa bahay na to, okay naman po ako dito. Kaso nga lang po, malungkot din po kasi. Tapos po, syempre po mag-isa lang po ako. Tapos yung mama ko po, andun po sa Makati. Kasi mama po, nagtatrabaho po. So hindi po kakayanin kung doon po sa Makati magtatrabaho siya tapos uwi po siya ng gabi dito. Hindi po kaya ng ganun kasi kaya po kailangan po stay in lang po siya doon. Katulong po.
Trabaho ko lahat sinasalo ko kahit hindi kaya. Kasi mag-isa lang talaga ako dito. Alisan, datnan. Ako talaga lahat. Pag umaalis sila, out of town, business trip. Bali, lahat pong anak ko, sinasanay ko pong maging independent. Kasi hindi po lahat ng oras, palagi akong buhay. Sabi ko sa kanya, matuto kang mamuhay na mag-isa. Basta padala ko sa'yo yung pera. Siya po nag-provide nung bahay na yun. Siya ang naghanap. Di ko pa po yun nakikita. Hanggang ngayon, di pa ako nakarating doon sa bahay na yun.
Siyempre, mahirap din po para sa akin na ako lang mag-isa dito. Tas walang wala akong kasama. Tapos, kumbaga, yung saya ko lang po, minsan, nararanasan ko lang sa eskwelahan, tsaka sa nararanasan ko lang po sa eskwelahan, tsaka sa sa balik. Meron po akong kaibigan dyan po sa malapit lang po, yung onting lakad mo lang po. Tapos meron po sila dung tindahan.
Opo, kasi po, sinabi rin po yun ni Papa na mahirap po kasi babae pa po siya unang-una. Madali lang daw pong sirain yung pinto. Paano daw po pag ganun? Natutulog po ako dito kasi sabi po ni Papa, babae din daw po siya.
Na maagang nanganganak, mga nabubuntis na, yung iba naglalakwat siya, nagiinuman.
May mga kilala po ako na na nabubuntis na po. Minsan po kaibigan ko pa po. Ganun po. Paano na yung anak ko pa? Mahirap na nga kami, magano pa ako ng sa mahirap pa. Di dadami na yung mahirap sa mundo.
Sabi ko po sa kanya, kasi siya na lang yung huli na nag-aaral, sabi ko sa kanya, iwas na muna sa mga boyfriend, sa mga kung ano-ano, kung saan-saan pupunta. Mag-focus sa pag-aaral, sa kanya sa pagsasayaw.
Isa din po to sa sa pangarap ng mama ko. Pangarap niya po kasi makita ko sa kumbaga sa sikat na entablado na sumasayaw na isang balerina na. Kasi ang gusto niya po, anak ko yan.
At sa pagdapo ng mahiwagang ibong Adarna, kayo'y mapapaawit sa
Gusto ko rin pong tuparin yun para po sa kanya. Kaya po nagpupush ako para kahit pa paano, kahit na gaano kahirap, gusto kong pakita sa kanya na kaya ko.
At muling gigisingin pa ng iyong halik, kahit man lang suling saglit ng buhay ko. Ang pangarap ba'y magkatotoo? Di ko na alam, muli pang mag-isa mula nang makapiling ka. Dahil ako'y umasa na lagi kang kasama, laban sa mundo ay tayo lang dalawa. Ano ba ang mangarap kong bigo at may sugat ang iyong puso?
Given these body of works that reside both online and offline through people's live and digital bodies, on physical, material grounds, and on screens, I believe that dance in its many facets will increasingly become hybridized. That while dance companies like the Bayanihan will teach dance live, it will have an online component. That the face-to-face lecture in a university or college will have breakup discussions done through Zoom. That while one will go to the studio to take dance technique classes, there will be opportunities to present choreographies as a piece of dance film or screen dance. And just like York's plan of bringing students to Manila to learn folk dances live and in situ, there might be a year when that travel will be virtual. In fact, York University has that kind of program now, and it is called Global Network Linkages. Such merging of liveness and virtual is already in our midst and is here to stay. Thus, it is critically important that we come to terms with it and to continue to be adaptively nimble. I look forward to our discussion after this lecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alcedo, for sharing your experiences and insights on dance, film, and life. It was the jump start we needed this morning. I do encourage everyone to watch Dancing Millennials, and Dr. Alcedo's other beautiful and inspiring films. I also encourage you to type your questions in the chat box. At this point, we'd like to welcome Dr. Alcedo to the forum. Hi,
Hello.
Patrick.
Hello, Dean Ami. Thank you so much. Well, good evening from my part of the world, and thank you for having me. It's a great honor, and to share with you my work. I think I'll start with just some very basic, or maybe I should start with a question actually that's already in the chat room. It's from Francis Junior, LPU Cavite, and he's asking here. My question is, what were your greatest challenges in doing this documentary, and how did you overcome those challenges? So yeah, any kind of documentary filmmaking, the challenge will always be, of course, since there's no script, it is you actually base your film on what is organically emerging from the field. Then the challenge is to really stay very sensitive to the narrative that's emerging, and also be very and to trust that there will be an inspiring and inspired story that will emerge out of your many hours and days and months of interaction. So I think that's really one of the challenges. And of course, I always go with a small crew because it's overwhelming to have a big crew. So I think I was able to overcome that kind of logistical challenge. But I think the first one is to really to trust yourself, right? That each one of us will have amazing stories to tell. And then the last, I think, challenge is really the post production, which is the editing, because that's really where a lot of hours, which, like for example, in my feature length film of 1 hour and a half, it's based on 5 years of footage. So which from those hours and hours and hours of footage are you going to choose and bring into 90 minutes? So that's really and of course the subtitling and translating the Tagalog into English and so on and so forth. So a lot of challenges, but I think if you're passionate about the work and if you believe in the story and the message of the story, then it's really worth it, because documentary filmmaking is so powerful.
I think the question of Olive is connected to the first question. Allow me to read her message. Thank you, Sir
Mhm.
Patrick. Inspirational presentation. I'm interested on how your process as a dance ethnographer and a docu-filmmaker inform each other during this time of uncertainty.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just like what I said in my lecture, I mean, these are what we're experiencing right now are tectonic shifts. I actually just got a copy of the Chronicle for Higher Education, and they have this special issue on what they call the coronavirus education. And basically, what they're trying to say is that the things that we are experiencing right now will really follow us for many years to come. And in fact, the scholarship is changing. Like I was teaching a PhD seminar in dance ethnography, and we actually had to read chapters on what we call hybrid ethnography. So even the language is changing. Even the language is changing as we speak. So the scholarship is changing. The way that we understand cultural research is changing. The way that I think we understand the body is changing. I mean, as a dancer, as a dance researcher, we have always valued the liveness of the body. But I think now, because of the COVID pandemic, there will be, I think it's already happening, that people will try to understand what does it mean to choreograph digital bodies, right? What does it mean to have productions that are completely online and through the virtual world, and I think more and more of that will happen. So just like what you're saying here is that as an ethnographer, it definitely will change. I think it will have a hybrid component, and I think as a documentary filmmaker, I don't know yet. I cannot imagine doing a docu without a face-to-face. I don't know yet how that is possible, but definitely I've seen that I have to learn a lot of technology. Really, I think if you want to become an educator now, you have to know technology. There's really no going around it. Your best friend is your computer and online technology, and my goodness, I learned Adobe, I learned Zoom. My brother Peter, who is actually the artistic director in both Ayuki and LaSalle, we would call him and ask for help. And while we have all these transnational global possibilities for quick communication, I think there's really no escaping our the need to understand technology and learn technology.
Okay. We'd like to know what were the biggest challenges you overcame in introducing Filipino dance culture abroad?
Oh wow, that's a thank you, Dynamic. Well, I'm very proud to say that I think York is the only university in Canada that actually has Philippine dance, and I think one of the few in the world, aside from, of course, the Philippines, right? I know that Hawaii has a Philippine dance course, but as a curriculum, right, as part of the curriculum, I think York has it. So one of the when York hired me as a tenure track professor, my mandate was to diversify the curriculum. So I think it was easy in AMI to introduce that. And of course I benefited so much because of the demographics of Toronto. We have a lot of Filipino population here. But also I think I'll be honest with you, it was very difficult to also convince my colleagues who are trained in Western forms, right? Ballet, modern dance, Graham, and so on and so forth, because they look at folk dance with like, is that a form with technique? You know, is that a form that students really need to learn in order to become professional dancers? So I think that the I had to really, I really had to over, I really had to
Sa may
show
electric ba ni?
I had to really show that there is technique
Ang ingay nyo. Nasa
in Philippine dance, and that in through Philippine dance you could learn a lot of things in terms of staging, in terms of research, and in terms of so on and so forth. So it's really I was able to really win the respect of my colleagues and you know the faculty and the university, I think, as a whole. So I think in the beginning it was quite difficult because even the word folk, right? What do you mean by that? Because it's not a codified technique. So I had to demonstrate that really strongly, right?
What made you decide to combine dance and film?
Oh yeah. Well, in the beginning I thought that it was not gonna, it was really quite out of need, and dance is such a visual medium. And while I love writing, because I did my undergrad degree in English at UP, and I love writing, I love reading, but I feel like the written writing about dance is of course powerful, but film is differently powerful. It gives a different kind of messaging. It gives a different kind of experience for the viewer. So I thought that if I want to reach a wide audience, I really have to go into filmmaking, because it's more instantaneous, I think. It's more immediate. It has a different kind of immediacy than text, and all the more in relationship to the theme of the conference. I think more and more people will really go the into looking at the potential of the screen,
Yes.
right? To disseminate arts, to disseminate dance, to teach, right? Even to do research. So I think my training in film has really helped me with the pandemic.
Yes, that's very, very interesting, delving into film and dance and trying to communicate, culture and life. So, what
Mhm.
distinct aspects of Filipino dance and culture do you wish to teach or make your international students imbibe or learn?
Well, I really want to. Well, number one, I want them to really have a respect for tradition. I also want to. I want to use Philippine dance as a way to understand colonialism, as a way to understand ways that Filipinos have responded to colonialism, ways for them to choreograph their own identities, but to really show the incredible ability of Filipinos to take ownership of who they are as a people. And I think Philippine dance is such an amazing way to do that. If you look at our castanets, they're bamboo castanets. I'm simplifying. If you look at if you look at, for example, the Spanish dances, we always say we have learned to Philippinize them. So there are, and also the diversity, right? The incredible diversity of our folk dances from the north to the south, and also through history. So I think I want the students to learn that this is a very rich culture, and that through Philippine dance or through Philippine folk dance, one can learn people's agency, right? How do people actually respond to external forces and take ownership of who they are, right? So and also use that lesson, right, to understand other forms as well.
How did the international community embrace the work that you've been doing?
Well, modesty aside, I think very positively. Like, just like what I said. I mean, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, which is kind of big in Canada, um, had this humongous project to introduce research to the community. I mean, I'm very proud to say I was chosen to open that program for York. So I gave a presentation with a professor who is working with NASA, for example. I mean, like, it's incredible. Somebody's the world's expert on bees or something like that. I mean, it's like really, really like quite phenomenal. And for York to really acknowledge, right, that Philippine dance, right, and specifically Philippine dance is an example of world-class research is incredible. Um, and become the face, for that particular event of York. And of course, my documentary films have won awards. So I think the reception has been very, very positive, not only outside the Philippines, but also within the Philippines.
Yes. Allow me to congratulate you on your recent awards and recognitions for your docus. I've seen the titles of three of your docus: Am I Being Selfish? A Will to Dream, and They Call Me Dax. So, can you briefly share with us your experience in making this docus?
Yeah, so this one, the three films actually are inspirations from the earlier film, not really early because that's like 2018, Dancing Manileños. And then when because of the success of that film, I said maybe I should really continue this work, and I fell in love with the community. They became good friends of mine, and I'm already the kuya of Dax. I'm already the kuya of this. I'm already the best friend of Luther. So I worked on that film and continued. So that's why A Will to Dream is the full the long film, and that really is 5 years in the making. And then out of that, I extracted the life of Dax, one of the students, and then the assistant teacher, John. So I was able to produce one full-length film and two short documentaries. And I think it's great because there are certain festivals that are for short films, and there are certain festivals for long films. And that's where that's what I want to do, is to really disseminate my works as wide as I can. And that's why I'm producing as many kinds of works as possible. So, they revolve around the relationship of dance and urban poor, and how do we actually how can dance actually intervene, right, in making people's lives better. Basically, that's the message of it, that and there are certain things in life that are universal. I put that in quotes. Hard work is hard work, right? And altruism is altruism, right? And perseverance is perseverance. So I think that's the kind of messaging that these films are trying to bring out, right? And from the point of view of Philippine dance, right? Of how it is practiced in Manila, right?
Wow, that's incredible. An interesting note is that you and your brothers are all into dance. You influence each other. How do you collaborate?
Oh, really wonderfully. I mean, Peter is here in the room. And yeah, we just enjoy working with each other. I mean, we're so lucky that we came from a family our parents love the performing arts. They never questioned our interest in dance or our music, and they never asked us to be engineers. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong becoming an engineer or a lawyer or whatever. And so yeah, my mom's a piano teacher, and my late sister was a beautiful folk dancer. And so we grew, and my uncle was according to my mom, was also a beautiful dancer. So I think it's in our, I don't know, I believe in that. It's in our blood. And I remember growing up, my mom would always put us on our dining table and ask us to dance. And if we are off the beat, she would like scold us. And so we learned rhythm very early on, and we just enjoyed, and we would support each other. I remember when Peter was in elementary school, we would go to the town plaza and watch him perform, and then give comments. So we would root for each other. But now that we are professionals, we respect each other's strengths. Like I'm really more into research, and Peter has the music, has the choreography, has the lights, and Paolo has the Hollywood extravaganza. So we help one another. But of course, at the end of the day, I'm still the kuya. So they always follow me. I get to have the last say because of our Filipino culture. But it's just beautiful. And even now, actually, Peter, my brother, has actually scored all my films. But now I'm bringing in Paulo to actually help with the research, because he just finished his MFA in dance. So he's becoming more of a team. Thank you, Dina.
Okay, one last question. As an educator, how would you encourage dance enthusiasts in the Philippines who are facing overwhelming challenges to continue with their craft, especially to those who is new to this online platform?
Wow. I think you just have to, I mean, there's really no, I mean, I'm Francis, I'm not also innocent of my privilege, right? That I'm in a developing country with resources. But I also understand that when you are in the Philippines, you may, I mean, the challenges there are different, perhaps, you know. So I'm not insensitive to that. But I think what you could do, as I can actually, I love watching this kind of viral videos happening in the Philippines, and they actually do choreographies in basketball courts, you know, and that goes viral. Actually, they get more views than my documentary films, you know. and and you know, mine was like 5 years in the making, you know. And you know, I mean, so I think it's really about creativity. It really is about, is finding, you know, finding your voice, your kind of movement, the stories that you want to tell. You know, it's there's no there. You know, how do you explain a documentary film that is so low cost but has but is so successful? So in the same way, is that how there's no stopping you if you have if you have if you have that piece, right? If you have a beautiful piece to share, because if you can record it, share it, then that's it, you're part of the World Wide Web. And it doesn't matter if you filmed it in downtown Toronto or in Kalibo Aklan. It doesn't matter, right? At the end of the day, right? It's really how creative were you, right? So no amount of LED lights will give you that, or whatever, or 4K camera, right? It's really the creativity, right?
Thank you very much. There's one more question, but I think I will request you to answer in the chat box.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you very much, Patrick, for sharing your insights. And of course, to everyone who submitted questions, those were indeed thought-provoking. Now we know it's probably getting late over there in Ontario, but before we let you go, Dr. Alcedo, please allow us to show our appreciation with a certificate. So may I request our AUN Executive Director, Dr. Choltis Diratiti, to join us. Good morning, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Allowed me to read the text. The ASEAN University Network, ASEAN University Network on Culture and the Arts, Commission on Higher Education, and the Association of Cultural Offices in the Philippine Education Institution Incorporated present this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Russ Patrick Alcedo for generously sharing his insights as a parallel speaker on the topic on online pedagogies in teaching dance in the new normal under the theme Managing the Arts and Empowering Young Artists in the New Normal, Part 2, for the Aun-Ca Crosslight Online Learning Session, Day 3, given virtually this 18th day of June 2021, signed by Ms. Glorife Zamodio, AUN-Ca Chair, and Dr. Choltis Diratiti, AUN Executive Director. Thank you. At this point, may we also request everyone to turn on their camera so we can capture this momentous event with Dr. Alcedo.
Okay.
Smile, everyone.
Okay, open your cameras. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, second page. Open your cameras. 1, 2, 3.
So just keep smiling.
Smiling. Third page, last page. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again, Patrick. Good night. Have a good rest. All right, may we request all our guests to please turn their cameras off as we go on a quick break. When we return, we'll be meeting our second speaker. So please stay with us and be back by 10:05. Thank you. Welcome back. In case you just joined us, this is week 3 of Crosslight online learning sessions, and this is one of 2 webinars happening simultaneously at this moment. Earlier, we heard from Dr. Patrick Alcedo, all the way from Toronto, Canada. For this next lecture, we move back to our time zone. Our next speaker obtained his music degrees in Australia, the United States, and his native Singapore. He spent 15 years mentoring musicians aged 13 to 25, which means he started doing that around that same age range as well. Now he's a full-fledged conductor who leads various school and community-based symphony bands and string orchestras. Apart from helping young musicians reach their full potential, he also believes in turning them into leaders in the field. Here to tell us about online pedagogies in music, please welcome the youthful and talented conductor of the National University of Singapore Wind Symphony, Mr. Francis Tan Huan Chun.
Hi, and greetings from Singapore. My name is Francis Tan, and I would like to welcome you to this sharing session on online pedagogies for teaching music in a new normal, from crisis to opportunity. Here's a little bit about myself. I'm the music director and resident conductor of the National University of Singapore Wind Symphony, which is a university wind orchestra. On top of that, I also conduct and work with high school and community wind bands and string orchestras, and so that keeps me pretty busy most of the time. I'm sure most of you can relate to the fact that the COVID pandemic has thrown quite a curveball to our work. For me, my work as a conductor and music educator has changed drastically in that the way we now interact with students and musicians have become very different compared to the past. So what is the new normal like for you? Recently, about a month ago, Singapore returned to its second semi-lockdown due to COVID, and all musical groups had to now move learning and music making online. And thankfully, we very much prevented paralysis of our music programs this time by learning from the challenges we had from the first lockdown last year. So in this session, I hope to share with you some of my thought processes and the possible teaching tools when we pivot teaching online. I'm sure you agree with me that online engagement is not intuitive for music educators and especially conductors. So here are a few key considerations to think about before we jump straight into action. Firstly, I would like to preface by saying that it will be very hard for online learning to completely replace the experience of making music live. That synergy and that ease of group learning is somewhat lost online. Secondly, this loss of synergy in group learning actually presents an opportunity for us to shift our focus instead to the individual development of each student. Thirdly, as much as possible, the online materials that we are going to create should be so impactful that their shelf life will extend even after COVID. And fourthly, we have to consider how we want to curate the online learning experience for our students. Will these online musical activities be done independently, asynchronously at their own time, or will they be required to meet synchronously as a group with us? And looking at all these considerations here, we could think about the opportunities we have gained from this COVID crisis, and not just thinking about what is lost, but the multitude of opportunities we could gain from teaching online. There are two main action steps that we can draw up from the key considerations from the previous slide. First step that we can think about is we need to decide which platforms to use. Asynchronously, when students learn independently in their own time without our direct supervision, and synchronously when students meet us live online. And once we have decided the platforms to use, the next step will be to crystallize what can be taught online and how best to teach it. The above thought processes for pivoting online is quite useful whenever we teach music online, amid the proliferation of online tools everywhere. So in the next segment, I will discuss with you each of the tools available and how they can be used to teach music online fairly effectively. Platforms are like our online classrooms and rehearsal halls. It is how students experience learning and interaction with us online. Choosing the right platform for students, depending on their needs, can drastically improve the learning experience and help them develop as strong musicians even when everything has moved online. The advantage of synchronous learning compared to live learning is that the students can choose to do it anytime, anywhere. This gives the students autonomy and enables them to be self-directed learners. To meet the challenge of having to go totally online during the lockdown last year, my students and myself actually designed this website that you are looking at. It's a one-stop website to host all their musical activities. And on this website, they can find learning materials and resources. They can connect with one another through forum or through Zoom discussions. And they can also put up music that they have created during the lockdown. One thing I learned about facilitating asynchronous learning is the usefulness of creating an online website such as this that can house all communications such as updates, announcements, and storage for all the learning materials that the students use. The greatest advantage of using an online website such as this is its longevity past COVID. It can even remain as the main online hub for your music program when face-to-face activities have resumed. Now, custom building your own website for your music program is a possibility using web design software such as Wix or Weebly. And actually, this particular website that you're looking at is created by Wix. This allows you to customize your students' learning experience when they are using your website. Now, if you prefer to use an existing website to host your students' learning, the other popular approach is using Google Classroom. Although the site experience is not editable and customization is minimal, you are still able to house all your communications and learning resources on just one website. Google Classroom is easy to set up, and if you're using the basic service, there are no fees involved. One benefit of using Google Classroom is that it links to Google Meet, which is a popular video conferencing software. Now, having this function allows you to conduct your lessons live while having access to your learning resources on Google Classrooms in real time. But if you're looking at other video conferencing software, the other popular option is, of course, Zoom. Now, here is a quick comparison between the two popular video conferencing services, and both can be used depending on your needs. They differ in terms of access, the number of free minutes, the audio available for music lessons, and interaction opportunities. Now, if anyone is interested to have a chat about my experiences with these services, we could chat later more in detail at the Q&A session. After deciding the platforms to best host your students' learning experience, the next step would be to crystallize what can be taught online and how best to teach it. So how can we crystallize what can be taught and how best to teach it? We can categorize what we can teach online into basically 4 components. Firstly, musical language and technique, which is basically teaching how to turn the notated score into an oral image. This component includes mostly music theory, oral training, and the various musical elements. Secondly, repertoire and score study is a component to help students acquire knowledge of the musical repertoire that's important to them, the related performance practices, and score study techniques. Thirdly, individuals' instrumental skills, which focuses on building the individual instrumental or vocal proficiency. Lastly, ensemble skills, the ability to make music together meaningfully. This seems to be the least effective when taught online, but with the available online tools, certain aspects of ensemble skills can still be taught. Of the 4 components, musical language and technique has one of the greatest potential to be acquired effectively online. Online tools provides the opportunity for students to practice and teacher to assess oral skills. For instance, it will be very difficult to assess the oral skills for every student in your music group live, unless you have the manpower and time to do so physically one by one. But if done online with the right tools, we can immediately and effectively find out how proficient is each student's oral skills, or their oral proficiency. One such tool that I use that you can consider is Tone Savvy. It is basically an in-browser software that helps students to practice ear training and music theory, and it includes most basic theory and oral exercises for students. For me, my students have diverse proficiencies when it comes to oral skills. So the ability to create differentiated classes based on their abilities is extremely beneficial for their learning. And progress reports are also available for every individual student for you to track their progress. And for the time being, it is free of charge due to COVID. So here is a quick demo of how some of the oral exercises look like on the website. For instance, I've created a sample one on recognizing intervals. You can choose the number of questions for the test and the kind of intervals to be tested. And these intervals will be listed as choices for the students. After the interval is played, the student will then choose one of the choice intervals. There is also a hear again function if the student needs to hear that interval one more time. If an error is made, it is then recorded as an error and they will get to try again until they get it correct. And the exercise will end once they're finished and the results will be recorded in the student's progress report. What is on our notated score often go beyond the notes. In our rehearsals, we help students acquire interpretation and understanding of other musical elements such as dynamics, articulations, phrases, and form in the music. In the online setting, we can still teach it, but assessing their understanding of these musical elements may be challenging. So one such way which I learned actually from a composer colleague of mine is using composition to assess their understanding. When composing, students actually need to consider how to use musical elements creatively and effectively. Naturally, it also allows us to assess their understanding of these musical elements. And to help composition be more accessible and less intimidating for students, one-note compositions that only use a single pitch are used for this exercise. Now, this will free up the worry of crafting melodies and harmonies and put focus on just the non-tonal musical elements that you're going to teach. So here is an example of a student's work. So let's go on to individual instrumental and vocal skills. Now, developing individual instrumental and vocal skills online can be quite daunting if you have a large group of students, because it can be very time consuming to listen to every student and give feedback for improvement. But one program which I've used with quite a bit of success to mitigate this issue is Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a program that allows students to easily upload their responses to my questions as videos. For music educators, it also allows us to give feedback easily to every student. If needed, comments from the teachers can also come in the form of a video demonstration. For instance, if you wanted to demonstrate something to correct a technique, this can easily be recorded as a video response for the student. The program is in browser, so students need not install any software on their PC. And clicking the record function just requires one click on Flipgrid's browser. And the videos recorded will not take up space on the student's devices or your device. In fact, everything is stored on Flipgrid, and currently this is free. We must note that the maximum time for each video recording is 10 minutes though, so managing assignments based on that limitation is quite crucial. So here is a quick demo for Flipgrid. This is an example of an assignment created for the students. As you can see, all the students who have recorded themselves are shown here in this list of students. And we can click on any of these students' videos to view. Okay, and once we have finished listening, we can immediately give comments or feedback to the students here. Or if needed, you can actually respond to the students by recording yourselves. Maybe you would like to demonstrate a certain way to play this exercise, so you record yourself here and the students can then access your video easily on the other side. So once you're done with the students, you can then quickly move on to the next student and continue to give comments and feedback for them. The other advantage of using Flipgrid is that the students can actually access each other's recordings and they can give feedback there too. Of course, if you're concerned with security, you can easily turn off that function. If you would like to showcase the students' work, you can also create a mixtape that can serve as some kind of demo for the other students that you're working with. Like I have mentioned, the greatest advantage of using this is that the students do not need to use up any data storage space on their computers or any kind of cloud services. The only drawback is the videos are limited to a maximum of 10 minutes in duration. So if you need students to record anything longer than that, you might have to use other means. Now, for music educators who have the time to conduct individual lessons online, I have included some information on comparing Google Meet and Zoom's original sound in hi-fi music mode. There is also some information on how to turn on Zoom's original sound for your lessons. So if any of you require this information, I can definitely share it with you during the Q&A section later. Okay, right. Let's go on to repertoire and score study. In fact, for myself, having the time to talk about repertoire in depth and studying the score in detail is very limited when we are physically meeting for rehearsals. But in the online setting, we really have a captive audience with us to study this music by these composers and its related performance practices. What has made studying score and repertoire online even more interesting is the ability to make it interactive and engaging by having online discussions over Zoom or a forum. What I found to be useful in shaping and encouraging discussion when studying repertoire is introducing themes that are that basically serve as entry points to the music in discussion. This can help students form personal responses to the music. So, for instance, when studying the music of Dmitri Shostakovich, we discuss how music can be an extension of one's identity. And once the student could relate to how music relates to their own identity, we can then draw parallels and go in depth into studying Shostakovich's identity in his music. So, like I've mentioned before, when we have our students as our captive audience, we possess the opportunity to study a full score in detail. We can actually very easily see the sections of the music that contributes to its overall architecture. We can learn about texture, that is how the parts relate to one another, which notes sound together, how the rhythms fit together, who is leading at which times, how each part contribute to the overall expression of the music. We can also it can also enhance our understanding of harmony, which is usually very difficult to figure out if from just one single part. And if you are going to do ensemble training online, this exercise will actually present itself to be very useful before we do that. And this brings me to the last component for online student learning, ensemble skills. Although it may seem counterintuitive to develop our students' ensemble skills online, there are actually online tools available that can mitigate the limitations when learning ensemble skills online. Online tools can help to develop a variety of ensemble skills. Tools such as multi-screen music video, soundtrack, and virtual studio can each be used to teach ensemble skills in a quite a specific way. For real-time feedback and instructions, these platforms are usually conducted synchronously with video conferencing services such as Google Meet or Zoom. And when coupled with score study, ensemble learning outcomes are actually much more achievable. Multi-screen music videos have exploded all over internet, especially during this COVID period. The videos are created by performing on a score with multiple parts, and each part is recorded by a single or multiple players. And if created by a single player, the student will have the opportunity to study each part in detail and apply that score study to their own performance. And because the parts are recorded at different times, having a timekeeping tool when you're doing this exercise is necessary to sync up all the parts. Actually assembling the parts can be done quite easily. Quite a lot of people have done it online. Nowadays, you can use PC software such as iMovie, Filmora, or even very simple iPhone apps or Android apps can do the job. So here is an example of a student playing a trio by himself after doing the score study and learning all the parts. And this is what he has created. Right. And this next program that I'm going to introduce to you is called Soundtrap. Actually, Soundtrap is a type of in-browser audio program known as a digital audio workstation, in short, DAW, that allows students to collaborate in larger groups. Basically, each student record and upload their part on DAW, and they will then sync up and study each other's parts from there. Because there is a time grid and a metronome function inbuilt in the workstation, students are able to record themselves and sync up with one another much more easily. Ensemble feedback can be given synchronously while students are refining their recordings. For instance, if you look at the picture next to here, next to the words, you can see I'm actually giving a class, a real-time class, while they are refining their parts on Soundtrap. Unfortunately, the sound editing ability on Soundtrap is not as sophisticated as most audio editing software, so additional editing software might be required. And there are also other kind of DAWs, and you can consider using BandLab or Amped Studio. And here is a short demo of Soundtrap. Right, and there are actually more online rehearsing ideas for you. And as technology keeps evolving, there are tools that can make live rehearsal online possible. But I must say the barriers to entry is quite high, maybe quite high. I must preface that I have not tried any of this yet, at least with success. But we are looking into using some of these online rehearsing programs in the upcoming months. The first one that is of a lot of interest is called the Virtual Studio by this company called Jack Trip. It actually claims that it has no additional audio setup on your devices, and all you need to do, all the students need to do, is to purchase this plug and play kit that will link up to their in-browser server, and that's where the online rehearsal will take place. The second one is called Gemless, or if some people prefer to use Sonobus, they're quite similar. They don't require you to buy anything, any kit, only a software to install, and you can set it up on your computer, but you will need to set up a server and to invite your students to come and rehearse online. Well, maybe some of the participants from out there have tried it already, and you're most welcome to share your experiences during the Q&A segment. As we wrap up this quick overview of the available online teaching tools, we can see that pivoting online has not only mitigated the negative effects from COVID, prevented paralysis to our programs, but presented many opportunities for us to grow our music program. The online tools available can support face-to-face rehearsals and shape music teaching by effectively and efficiently develop our students in the area of musical language and technique, repertoire and score study, and their individual instrumental and vocal skills. Even in the area of ensemble training, it can also be enhanced using some of these online tools. And through asynchronous learning, we are really changing our students' learning behaviors to be more self-directed learners. And the advantage of that is that our students will acquire the autonomy and ownership to their musical learning. And our music programs will now have better online visibility and presence, and thus with greater impetus for home-based learning and work from home populations to interact online. Participation in our programs can now even include students or members not limited by location or schedule. And lastly, collaborations between music groups across borders can be made more possible as online tools such as the DAWs, the digital audio workstations, and programs like virtual studios and Jamless evolve. So I hope this presentation has given you a lot of food for thought, hopefully, in your online teaching. And if you have any questions, I'll be very glad to answer them at the upcoming Q&A. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Francis Tan, for sharing the many possibilities in teaching and creating music online. I'm sure all aspiring musicians and educators in the audience will be inspired to hone their craft and teaching even more. At this point, we'd like to invite everyone to type in their questions in the chat box so that Francis can answer your questions. Hi, Francis.
Hi, good morning.
Good
Nice to be
morning.
here.
Yes,
Yes,
it's
so
a
glad that we are
pleasure
in the
meeting you.
same time zone.
Yes, that's good. I like what you mentioned about having an online compromise, accepting what is lost. So, how did you or your department transition from face to face classes to online classes?
I must be honest with you. When we had to go online last year, we were all very shocked because the way we do things has become so different. So when we went online, there was a lot of trial and error. There was a lot of like looking around for resources, and that took a long time. And actually, from the presentation you saw, that was work done in a year's time. We managed to come up. Yeah, we managed to accumulate some of these tools, and we found out some work so well, some work well, and some don't work so well. So the transition has not been easy, but and actually, when we first started this online teaching, online learning, there was a lot of resistance from the students because they're so not used to learning online. But after one whole year of doing this on and off intermittently, and then, like I mentioned, now we are in our second lockdown. The students are more receptive now, and I found that things like score study, which we used to not be able to do in depth. Now we can do that more in depth. So we can see some actually some positive outcomes from learning online.
Mhm. Okay. How many students do you usually have in one class?
In the usually about close to 100 students.
Wow.
Yeah, so we have like in the symphony orchestra, it's more than 100 plus. In the wind symphony, it's about close to about 80 or 90. In the community bands, is about that too. So it's quite challenging to have
Yes,
everybody
yes,
together.
I'm
Yes.
sure. So how have they responded to online learning?
Like I said, at first they were quite resistant because the nature of learning is very different. But now, um after the ministry has encouraged everybody to start doing home-based learning, online learning, we found that they're more receptive now, and especially when I found that it was more effective if we always start the asynchronous stuff with a synchronous session. So we do a Zoom session and we talk about the things they need to learn. And then as we move into the asynchronous stuff, then they're more likely to be more engaged.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Anna Piquero of UANP. In Soundtrap, do students edit their own playing or do they keep recording until they are in sync with the first one who recorded?
Yes. So so there is a metronome function on Soundtrap. So they will get to use that metronome function to keep time, to be in sync. Uh, uh, I must say, when the students start to do it, the first few times, you will hear a lot of out of sync parts, and that is to be expected because they're still not used to it. But after a few tries, you see that they get used to it, and then they'll start to be in sync with the metronome. And if they find that they are not in sync with other parts, maybe due to a rhythm issue or maybe due to a particular listening strategy not working out, then they have the ability to re-record their part or take that part offline and edit it and put it back on.
Audio is very vital to your art form. So given that the internet can sometimes compromise the quality of audio and video, excuse me, especially through platforms such as Zoom, how do you reconcile or manage, sorry, how do you reconcile or manage the likelihood of glitches, especially when you instruct and critique?
Right. Yeah. So I think like there was one part which I mentioned in my presentation on virtual lessons. Um, I think our some of these programs like Zoom or even Google Meet have gone a long way since last year to make that sound, to make the audio more and more real. So so Zoom has this function that allows more original sound to be made from the other side. So if you're interested in, I can show you. I mean, it's in my slides. I can share with some of you. If you turn on the original sound, it will enable you to hear your students more clearly. But if you do use Google Meet, I've also tried it, and I noticed that the sound has improved. The audio sound has improved quite tremendously. But in reality, I mean, it cannot replace face-to-face learning. It cannot replace that physical live audio, I think. Yeah. Am I answering your question?
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you for that.
No worries.
You're the conductor of NUS Wind Symphony. So how have you managed to do rehearsals and performances?
Right now, we are back to online. It's actually thankfully this is during the vacation time, but we did come up with a plan. Maybe, can I share something on screen? Okay. It's just a little plan that we come up with, because Singapore, we have safety measures regarding the number of unmasked players. I believe now even the singers cannot meet to sing. So depending on the number of unmasked players that we can have, or unmasked singers that we can have, we are going to use any one of these plans. So in terms of rehearsals, if it's online, we're going to use Flipgrid. We're going to start to explore Gemulus and then use Soundtrack with Zoom. Okay, and the kind of repertoire that we're going to use is mainly section chamber ensemble music, brass woodwind chamber, percussion chamber music, and so on and so forth. If this online thing extends beyond maybe a couple of months' time, then I think if we have to perform something, then we'll start looking at how to come up with some of these multi-screen music videos for the whole band, for the whole group. Or we're also looking at maybe we can use Gemulus or Virtual Studio to do our live streaming, but the live streaming concert will be from home. Of course, the drawback is Gemulus, programs like Gemulus or Sonobus or even Jack Trip require fairly good internet connection, cable internet. So that would take a lot of time for us to explore with our students. Okay, and as the learning will still be carry on. We still carry on the learning, but it will be through our online website that we have created last year. We will still carry on with our Zoom lessons. We will do score study. We'll do some of this face-to-face lesson on Zoom. Using Zoom. And then, if the government lift up the restrictions and we go up to five unmasked players, then of course we will start having live streaming concerts. Maybe if the safety measures allow, we can have some live audience in our group. So it all depends on. So I think the strategy, the plan would be to have it dependent on the existing safety measures, and then based on that, we will have specific plans, specific strategies to running our programs. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We envy you so much because you're able to do limited face-to-face performances. We have a question from Anna Piquero, who is also a music teacher. Do you also have the experience that Zoom cancels out the high notes? I can't seem to hear my students' high notes. How do you reconcile that? Is it the app or is that our Philippine connection?
Oh, no, I think, yeah, I have had the same experience with that too. high notes. Actually, I have the experience with low notes. Some of my bass students, my tuba students, when they play, I can't like this. It gets lost, and I suspect it's the microphone. If you use a fairly good microphone, it will actually pick up. I don't think it's the internet connection, because if it's the internet connection, it would just not produce the sound at all. So I think it's the microphone that's using cancels out the high notes. Maybe you can consider using the audio function on Zoom for music lessons, and that maybe can help you.
Okay, thank you. From Jose Emmanuel Aquino, how would you compare Jamulus and Sonobus with regards to latency?
Yeah, sadly, I've tried Gemless one time. I've not tried Sonobus. So I cannot tell you from experience the difference. When I was trying Gemless, my computer actually crashed many times. So I didn't even get to the point where I can discuss latency with you. But from what I understand, Gemless has slightly better reduced latency compared to Sonobus. This is what my understanding is. But anybody who has tried it, please let us know whether it works, which one works better.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your answer. From Santa Bascar, who was one of our speakers from the first session, to train percussion instrument, is it possible to use DAW?
Yes. So the digital audio workstation, like Soundtrap or BandLab, you can use percussion instruments. Actually, you can, when you record yourself, when you record the instrument, do it via the microphone function, and then it will pick up the sound from that percussion instrument.
Are there any other questions from the audience? You mentioned about ensemble skills, developing ensemble skills. So how have you managed to overcome the challenges in doing ensemble skills with your symphony?
Right. Yeah. I think the biggest challenge is when you have let's say 100 students to teach ensemble skills. How do you actually work with so many students at one time? I think one of the ways is to divide them into small groups, and within the small groups, you can pick a piece of music that you want to teach in terms of ensemble skills. So let's, for instance, the outcome is to teach ensemble skills that has more with mirroring, with call and response skills. Then you pick a piece of music that work for that, and then you have everyone come on maybe Soundtrap, and then from Soundtrap, in real time, they can record themselves, and from there you can discuss, oh, this, maybe you should play it this way, or maybe perhaps the response here should be a bit different, and then they can refine it and re-record themselves again on Soundtrap. So am I answering your question? I hope I am.
Yes, thank you very much. So thank you for answering all the questions, and for those who submitted their questions in the chat box. Before we let you go, Francis, allow us to show our appreciation with this certificate. And may we request our AUN Executive Director, Dr. Choltis Diratiti, to join us. So allow me to read the text. The ASEAN University Network on Culture and the Arts, Commission on Higher Education, and Association of Cultural Offices in Philippine Education Institutions Incorporated present this certificate of appreciation to Mr. Francis Fan for generously sharing his insights as a parallel speaker on the topic on online pedagogies in teaching music in the new normal, under the theme Managing the Arts and Empowering Young Artists in the New Normal, Part 2, for the Aun-Ca Crosslight online learning session, Day 3, given virtually this 18th day of June 2021. Signed by Ms. Glorife Samodio, AUNCA Chair, and Dr. Choltis Diratiti, AUN Executive Director. you, Francis. May
Thank
we
you.
request
Thank you,
everyone
sir.
to turn on their camera so we can capture this momentous event with Francis.
Ay, teka. Okay, open your cameras.
Smile.
Smile. Thank you. Second page. Smile. Third page. Smile. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you once again,
Thank you.
Francis.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, may we request everyone to please turn their cameras off as we proceed to the next part of the program. I know we've been talking about how to manage, market, and even teach art during the past couple of weeks. So we figured it's only appropriate to present art as well. In our first session last June 4, we met some of the faculty members of Guangxi University. Now it's time to virtually meet their student artists. Today's guest performance tells the story of a blind man who isolates from the outside world after the death of his wife, with his sole source of solace being his tianqin, traditional musical instrument. All that changes when he meets a young lady who becomes enamored with his tianqin and starts to communicate with the old man in a playful way. As a result, the old man rediscovers his soul as more young individuals discover his music. This is a story of preserving treasured traditions and passing them on to younger generations. We present to you the story of Tianqin by the dance major students of Guangxi University.
下面有请11号参赛作品《情愫》。
Thank you very much to the dance majors of Guangxi University for that very spectacular and vibrant number. And to our audience, welcome back to week 3 of Crosslight online learning sessions. Our third and final speaker for today is an assistant professor at the UP Diliman Department of Speech Communication and Theater Arts, as well as a performance maker. Last year, she collaborated with playwright Layeta P. Bukoy in creating the monovlog, a genre of online performance that bundles the various Filipino lockdown experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic. The monovlog was eventually adopted by the Cultural Center of the Philippines, Tanghalang Pilipino, which featured film actress Ms. Nora Honor, the community theater Sining Banua in the Bicol region, Universidad de Santa Isabel, and the UP Los Baños Vice Bag Online. Can't wait to hear more about that. Here to talk to us about online pedagogies in teaching theater and film, please welcome Assistant Professor Olivia Kristine Nieto.
Hi, I'm Olivia Kristine B. Nieto. My preferred pronouns are she and her.
I'm an assistant professor at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and I'm also a performance maker. I'm presenting from my house slash performance space in Pasig, Philippines. I will be presenting my paper entitled Emergency Performance Pedagogy. In March 2020, Chancellor Michael L. Tan ordered the shutdown of the University of the Philippines UP Diliman campus due to the COVID-19 threat. Our Department of Speech, Communication, and Theater Arts, DSCTA, canceled the remaining 2 weeks of our 4-week run of Dulaang Universidad ng Pilipinas' Nana Rosa. For the first time in the history of UP, the university pivoted to remote learning. Faculty members have been working tirelessly since May 2020 to prepare course packs for students. The university encouraged faculty members to explore the possibilities of digital platforms and create experiments in delivering programs and courses to enhance learning. As both a performance maker and an assistant professor in the university, I asked myself, how do we teach theater online at the time when live events are canceled, performance spaces are closed, artists are unemployed, teachers are worrying about copyright implications in their course packs, and the future of theater is uncertain. As educators in UP, we are expected to teach, to do administrative work, and continue creating research and creative work simultaneously. These responsibilities guided us in the implementation of the several actions that proved to be significant in the university and in our practice. To help us better understand the problems and possibilities we will be confronting in remote learning, we have to survey and connect with our current performance ecology, which means the relationship we have created and we will be building with our students, alumni, other colleges within the university, other universities with theater programs, institutional partners here and abroad, and arts and cultural institutions. As the former undergraduate program coordinator, I was responsible to initiate the conversations with the theater division on how we would transition all the processes of the theater programs to online platforms, from admission to graduation. The following were the initial steps that the DSCTA took. First, we recalibrated the curriculum checklist by offering performance classes first. We added a special topic on script analysis in the first semester before taking the directing course in the second semester. We also delayed the technical theater and design courses for one academic year to give ample time to instructors of the courses to prepare their space and equipment. We also surveyed the projects online, which can be used as local resources for our classes. These include our international conferences, research projects, creative works of faculty members, creative works, and Dulaang UP performance videos. We also collaborated with students who are digital natives, other institutions within the university which have performance classes such as the College of Arts and Letters, College of Music, and the College of Mass Communication. The department, in partnership with the College of Arts and Letters and the UP Office for Initiatives in Culture and the Arts, or UP OICA, invited students, alumni, educators, practitioners, and our own faculty members to share their best practices and experiments through the colloquium Emergency Theater and Performance. The focus of the colloquium was on the possibilities and problems of theater and performance in the time of pandemic, with the following themes: case studies of new and emergent performance forms, the state of artist welfare during the global health crisis, urgent and emerging roles and spaces in performance making, and digital modalities of learning and teaching theater and performance. All videos are available to the public via the UP College of Arts and Letters YouTube channel. In consultation with our students, we proceeded with the student practicum with the Cultural Center of the Philippines, or CCP Tanghalang Pilipino, TP, during the mid-year 2020. 12 practicum students and student volunteers and 2 faculty members from the DSCTA participated in the first ever online festival of the Virgin Lab Fest, or VLF, which coincidentally was the only online festival that braved the pandemic.
Our students collaborated with professionals to navigate how to run and broadcast online performances. Today, we are proud to announce that our students are the sought-after broadcast operators, stage managers, and production managers in Metro Manila online performances. They have also enhanced their own student-led online theater companies with the knowledge and skill that they learned in the VLF. The department also collaborated with our institutional partner, LaSalle College of the Arts in Singapore in the international conference Arrhythmia, Performance Pedagogy and Practice. I, together with 3BA Theater Arts students, participated in panels on acting, directing, and technical theater by sharing our methodologies and experiments to define performance making online. We were able to create a network of students, faculty members, and practitioners in Asia and the United States of America. I was also able to gain insight on how institutions pivoted to online platforms by moderating local and international conferences, which in turn, those outputs that we created became supplementary materials and research for the university. As the former fellow of the Asian Performing Arts Farm or APAF, I was the speaker and moderator of the talk exchange on APAF Filipino artists, which focus on conversations in international collaborations, funding, and online performances. The organizers, Comunidad X Antidisciplinary Collective, and the Japan Foundation Manila shared their archive to the public. I was also specifically selected as a performance maker to moderate the NCCA or National Commission for Culture and the Arts, National Committee on Visual Arts, NCVA, to moderate their 6 sessions on how visual artists across the country migrated to online platforms and how they are envisioning the future of their discipline. I also collaborated with Black Canvas, Ateneo de Manila University, and the LaSalle University to confront problems and possibilities of remote learning. ADMU was focusing on the talents of their students on graphic design and programming, which proved to be useful in their own model of performance making. DLSU centered their experiments on the home as a site of performance that manifested in their modules. I was also invited by the Philippine Educational Theater Association, PETA, to moderate a session on how their artists were creating original works. Playwright Layeta P. Bukoy and I created the monovlog, a coinage that contracts the terms monologue and vlog, whose creation took place when Filipinos turned to the internet to exercise free speech and creative expression in the time of enforced lockdown during the COVID-19 pandemic. The monovlog is a genre of online performance that bundles the various Filipino lockdown experiences as a proof of life, a private conversation in social media, a health advisory, a tribute to frontliners, a death folder, a shout out to advocacy groups, a community-led response to the pandemic, and a call for help. The monovlog is staged live in the monovlogger's home and is broadcast via Facebook Live, an online feature of the social networking site Facebook, whose speed of distribution and reach of audience match the urgency of different states of emergency. Theater companies and organizations such as the Tanghalang Pilipino, Sining Banwa Community Theater in Bicol, Universidad de Santa Isabel, and UP Los Baños Icebag Online adopted the form. Together with these institutions, we were able to create an online form which was replicable and later proved to be profitable. Our exploration of the monovlog brought us new networks to collaborate with, such as the Ripples World, a project of the intercultural roots in the United Kingdom. I was commissioned to create 4 online performances. I was able to experiment the form and collaborate with students and faculty members. The Magdalena Project, founded in Wales in 1986, is a dynamic cross-cultural network providing a platform for women's performance work, a forum for critical discussion, and a source of support, inspiration, and performance training. In their first online festival, Bodies on Live, Magdalena Online 2021, I will be presenting our 15-month experimentation of the form in practice, in research, and in the classroom. The monovlog experiments were also presented in international conferences such as ADSA Acts of Gathering 2020 in Sydney, Australia, in Singapore, Sydney, Australia, in Singapore, with the Drama Educators Association 2021 and the Asia Cultural Studies Society Virtual Conference 2021. As a grantee of the masterclass via the local nonprofit organization Kaisipan PH, I was able to share workbooks related to performance to my students. I also continued the objectives of the colloquium Emergency Theater and Performance in my own podcast, Tawid sa Harbor. I interviewed performance makers, which include online content creators, drag queens, community theater, to share how the change in their performance making in social media and other online platforms. This podcast was also featured by the UP Diliman Office for the Advancement of Teaching as a Remote Learning Innovation and Solution of the University. In my classrooms, I required my students to document their own performance making in their digital acting journal. At the start of the class, I would make it clear to my students that the mobile phone may be used in class as an archiving tool and or as a performance tool, meaning they can use film techniques. Also, instead of focusing on Western styles of acting, I encourage my students to engage in collaborative experiments with their classmates. Improvisation proved to be an essential tool for each performer. Since we were on a remote learning setup, I had to teach my students to shift their mindset on how to introduce themselves to their space at home by transforming their private space into our performance space. They had to experiment with their available technology at home. They were not just performers, but they also became designers, technical theater practitioners, and their own safety officers. They had more liberty on how they would design their final performance, whether they would take a long shot of a live performance or use film techniques to create their own narrative. It was significant for me as a facilitator of the class to understand the context of my students during this time and how they are redefining performance making. Lastly, as a COVID survivor, I incorporated in my classes the significance of pauses, rests, and naps, especially in the time where death and mourning have become a part of our everyday lives. I wanted them to understand that as performers, our main instrument is our body, that we should have a mastery of it, and it will help us create more mindful performances. It is also paramount that they are taught agency in performance making, as they can help in envisioning an ideal classroom setup, a new model of performance making with available technology, and how arts can be a solution to our present scientific problem. In conclusion, these are the things that I would like to leave with the participants of this conference. First is to collaborate. In collaboration, we can share resources, knowledge, skills, and we can be more inclusive. Second is to experiment, so we can create new models and create new parameters in performance making. Third is to archive our experiments, all the things that we've been doing, and even our research. And lastly, to teach with compassion. When I say teach with compassion, I think that we should listen more to our bodies as faculty members, and also as listen to our students, and maybe connect with our universities on how they can help us with what we need during this time. I would like to share with you one video from the Ripples World project that I created with Assistant Professor Gemma Vier of the Department of Linguistics in UP Diliman, and Miss Thea Tolentino, a Master's of Music Therapy student at the University of Melbourne, and one of our students, Camilo de Guzman, along with our video contributors from UP Diliman, Ateneo, de Manila University, and Mint College. So this video is entitled PH Remote Learning. So the description says, adapting does not necessarily mean that people automatically conform to these changes. At times, They come up with strategies to cope temporarily and after adjusting, come face to face with these challenges, expressed by phrases that call to more inclusive and grounded solutions. We have interpreted these words: hinga, breathe, pahinga, rest, tatag UP, which is a call for the university constituents to respond to the growing needs of the community amid the crisis due to the pandemic. ACAD freeze is a call for an academic freeze to give ample time for students and teachers to attend to immediate needs in the time of a global health crisis. Hashtag no student left behind is a call for access to equal resources to implement remote learning. Solusyong medikal, hindi militar. Information, not force. Medical and financial support, not guns. And lastly, malasakit, compassion. I hope that this video stays with you when we create our future modules and when we recreate our performance meeting. Thank you.
Thank you po, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you
Thank
po.
you, ma'am.
Maraming salamat, Prof. Olive Nieto. Thank you for reminding us to be more mindful and teach with compassion. It's also great to know that despite the extremely trying circumstances, you never stopped creating. So may we remind the audience to please type in your questions in our chat box so we can ask the questions to Professor Nieto.
Hi, good morning, Dr. Ramolet.
Morning, and thank you for joining us. What was your process in creating a monovlog?
It was hard the first time that I did it because I was stuck in a different place. So I live in Pasig and I'm stuck in my sister's home in Mandaluyong. So all I had was a mobile phone and my own earphones with a microphone. So I had to do it in my kitchen or a living room or at the balcony of whatever space was available to me because I was just sharing a space with my sister and her housemates. So I had to do it with Layeta via, I think, Facebook Messenger. And we have to collaborate there because I was using a stable Wi-Fi connection while she was using a mobile data. So the connections were, we have an equal access to those resources, and we had to work with that. We wanted that raw quality on the beginnings of the monovlog because we wanted to share with our audiences the situation of our artists at that time. We were very privileged at that time because we both have our jobs with the university while other artists were shifting to other disciplines or maybe other fields like cooking and other jobs that will provide food for their family. So yes, I started with a mobile phone and an earphone and a microphone and just constant collaboration with Layet on what's happening because we were listening to the news. The IATF rules were changing every time and we had to take inspiration from those happenings every day and we had to shoot it the next day. I think it's sort of a diary for us on how artists were living at that time and how we were actually living during that time. Because in monovlogs, well, in vlogs, they have paid promotions, they present products. But in our monovlog, we were reaching out to people to donate goods to other communities because we have no access to supermarkets because they are closed, or we have restrictions during the lockdown. Yeah.
So, what was the response of the viewers to your first vlogs?
Because it was broadcasted in my personal account, they thought it was actually my story. It was a scripted monologue, and my friends and actually my mother was commenting like, how are you? What's happening to you? Are you eating well in your house? So people didn't have this exact boundary on the personal and the public persona of what I'm presenting. So that's actually interesting. It's sort of a liminal space for me. And secondly, as an artist, I was not able to prepare myself in Facebook Live audiences because there are some people who were reacting to the material, so they were sending angry reactions, and I thought they were bashing. I thought they were heckling the performance. So it was a sort of a different frame for me, and those mistakes that I was encountering during those times were actually the things that I shared in my classes. So I told my students that you have to prepare yourself when you go live or when you broadcast your performances. So you have to be sure that you are prepared for that. Or do you want to just stage it with a few people who can really understand the context of your work? So yeah, all of my failed experiments in those 15 months in doing the monovlog became the content of my module. So I told my students, you know what, I have 100 mistakes in doing this presentation, and I encourage you to do the same, to commit more mistakes so we can create a module together on what's an ideal setup in the classroom and what's a new model of doing performances.
Performance. Thank you. Thank you. Brian Viray is asking, what was the most memorable theme or topic you and Professor Bukoy explored?
I had this persona of the politician. She was a politician. So it's sort of a mix and match of all the politicians that we have here in Metro Manila. And it was so hard to present because there was already news about the anti-terror bill. Yeah, so we had to be very careful with our content. So I was doing this persona of a politician who doesn't know the boundary between a public servant and a celebrity. So she was presenting herself in Facebook Live as a celebrity. So she calls her public servants as bashers, those who do not, do not understand what's happening to the local government unit. So that was very interesting for me, that character of our politicians were trying to maintain this public image of being a good public servant, and at the same time a celebrity and an influencer. So we're playing with those personas, and we're also trying to critique the present restrictions of the lockdown, that we have this unequal access to resources. Every local government unit, we're giving different quality of care packages. Like, we were receiving good services in our area, but some cities were can actually look at those conditions in our monovlog. So we were comparing those things. So I think that's the most memorable, doing that politician. She's called Ate ng Bayan, the big sister of the community. So yeah.
How many characters have you created in your monovlogs?
In the 1 month of the initial lockdown, we created 13 monovlogs. So we did that for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks. 14 characters. So I did an influencer, a celebrity who hates her yaya. She doesn't, give permission to her yaya to go to her province. And I did this. There's this. I also remember this one particular moment, this personal persona, and it was very personal to me. And it's a good account of how an artist is coping during the pandemic. So one of my colleagues and friends passed away during that week, and I had to perform that monovlog. It was very personal to us because Layeta was offering that performance to her friend who was, who contracted the virus. And during that time, I was doing this character of a best friend who was talking to her best friend who was confined in a hospital. And towards the end of the performance, I was breaking down and I didn't know where it was coming from. And I think it was also a good document on how we were coping as artists too, that the pressure of producing more online performances were actually taking a toll on us. And eventually I had to pause and reflect on how we were actually moving forward with the monovlog. Yeah.
Yay. We have a question from Professor Mary Kristine Muico. You mentioned about collaborating with a music therapist from Melbourne in one of your projects. I'm curious as to the nature of the project with music therapy and what was the output from it. How successful was it in terms of feedback and results?
I collaborated with Miss Thea Tolentino. She was my high school friend, and when I showed her, I gave her the concept, the whole concept of the video. So I told her I invited Assistant Jem Javier from the linguistics department to list down all the words that we were using during remote learning. And I asked the students to give us a glimpse of what was their response to the remote learning. And when Thea saw that, she said, there's a problem with our rhythm right now because we are forced, with our neoliberal education, we are forcing the students to adapt our pace in producing and in producing performances during this time. And um, I think Thea specifically said, you know what, I wanted to do a fast-paced music to reflect this pace that we were imposing on our students. And with the students and with their home setup, it's sort of contrasting. And I think the whole video is a critique and actually a reflection for us faculty members too on how do we reconcile these experiences of our students and what we are imposing, the requirements that we are imposing on them. So I think in time we can get that, we can give that kind of mental support for them to carry on with this remote learning setup, because in the Philippines it might take us a longer time because of our political situation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. How has the pandemic influenced your thought process in creating stories?
Oh, it was totally different. Maybe because I was trained in the hierarchical setup of the theater, where I wait for the playwright to present her script first, and then I have to act it out. But this time I think I have more control over the content that I would like to do, because Zoom is free. So you get to do performances that you really like and that you really are passionate about. So I think most of the things that I'm doing right now are on my experiences of the lockdown, the government response to the pandemic. I think that's very important as an artist right now, on how we critique what's happening in our country. So I hope I answered your question, Din Romalet.
Yes. How have your students responded um, to the way you teach theater in this mode of teaching?
In all my performance classes, all of my students are very anxious to take my subject, because They always say that they cannot replace the live, the live feeling of, acting. And that was the one thing that I had to resolve, that anxiety around this digital performance. So most of them are very afraid because they think that they have to spend more. They have to spend more with the gadgets that they are using at home. And yes, and they have to also, I have to listen to their concerns, because during the mid semester of this current semester, some of my students were actually taking care of their parents who contracted the virus. So there are so many reactions that I'm getting every day. And even during this finals week, students were, commenting like, "Mom, I cannot submit today because my internet is not working." And those are, hard balls that we are being thrown at you every week and every day. Yeah, so there is no ideal setup on how to do remote learning. And I think the best way is to just, have a quick fix on what they are encountering right now, the problems that they are encountering right now. And hopefully in the next semester, I can adjust again. I think that's a process, like commit mistakes. And at the end of this semester, I have this post evaluation with my students where we can talk about how I can improve in teaching performances.
Okay. Thank you. There's a question from Judy Ngo. Do you find yourself teaching film more than theater, and how do you find the balance?
Yes, in teaching body positions on stage, because we have these languages that we use, like this is a full front. So I'm teaching those students. But of course, you can't teach like proximity using theater terms. So I had to use film terms, like this is a medium shot and this is a full body shot. And yes, I find myself using both languages, and I'm very privileged to have worked in television and film to use those languages. But I also tell my students, I remind my students that this is also not film, because filmmakers, their main medium is the big screen. So I think that we have to always go back to that platform. What platform are we using? We are using Zoom. We are using the internet. So I think that we can use both languages to just, as a quick fix to understand each other. But eventually I am hoping that we can create a new language, or maybe new gestures that will, fit this medium, this Zoom, like you do mute and unmute. I think there will be new gestures that we can learn from this.
Can you share with us your experience and the students' experience in the Virgin Lab Fest last year?
It was, everybody was anxious because I don't know how to broadcast online performances, and the students were excited to learn more softwares because I think they are the digital natives of this generation. So they adapted well. They adapted well when we learned the main software was named OBS, or Open Broadcasting System. So they had to learn that. We learned languages like online. There's an online stage and an inline stage, like it's a backstage. There's a Zoom, and your backstage is your Facebook Messenger. So you have two managers for that. And our students were relearning that setup. So they were taking down notes on how they would run it when they when they share their learnings to the university. And yeah, they are all now OBS operators in our online performances. We teachers have not perfected the software yet, but our students are very adept with this software. And I think what another skill that they learned was how to do inventory at the time of the pandemic, because I think they learned how to put all the props and the costume in one space during the VLF. And they learned how to, to use Grab applications and Uber to send out those props. And those are additional, additional processes that they had to learn during the Virgin Lab Fest. So we're hoping to replicate that process in Dulaang Universidad ng Pilipinas in our own theater laboratories in the university.
What regular measures do you take in practicing, doing rehearsals, producing your vlogs?
It's I think that it's twice the effort when you're doing a rehearsal online, because you have first to consider the gadgets that your students are using, because most of them are using mobile phones, not laptops. So there's a difference in the speed. Second is if they are using mobile data or Wi-Fi connection. So sometimes I have to rehearse with them with their videos off because of their the situation of their internet connection. So it's also a skill for me, a new skill for me as a teacher, to teach them voice acting. It's like radio drama. So you have to adjust to their finals. You have to consider if you're doing a radio drama because of their internet connection, or you're using, a performance video. So that's one thing. We're using Zoom, but if their internet connection is not working, we can use Messenger, Facebook Messenger, or if their internet connection only works at night, they will submit via Google Drive. And also there is another application, a Filipino mobile app application, Kumu. It uses a lower quality of video. So some of my students would go there. I also learned to rehearse via TikTok applications because those are 1 or 2 minute videos, I think, because those are the only things that your students can can comply with. So I had to adjust that, and towards the end of the semester I had to do coaching, one-on-one or 1 to 2 coaching to my students using different applications. So I'm using Facebook, I'm using Google Meet, I'm using Zoom. So yes, as a teacher, you have to use all available platforms to adjust to your students' needs. And most of them are introverts. So most of them would just submit scripts and, sample videos of them using the mobile phone. So yeah, there are so many setups, and sometimes my laptop would crash. I think those are the basic needs of our faculty members right now. And yes, as a teacher, learn those applications right now because our students are very, very informative about these applications. Yeah.
So how do you see the future of teaching theater in the next 2 to 3 years?
Oh, that's very difficult to answer right now. But we are hoping with the little developments and with the little actions that we are doing in the university, we are hoping to experiment more using online performances and to have more collaborative classes. I think we're doing that pre-pandemic, and I think it is needed more because it will save time also for the faculty members, the preparations. Yeah, more collaborative experiments and more collaborative classes. And because of the possibilities of using Zoom, we can invite more international lecturers. I think that's the direction that we are taking right now. We're partnering more with we're we're creating more MOUs, a memorandum of understanding, with other universities to actually share resources and share best practices.
At the start of the pandemic, Dulaang UP started broadcasting their past productions. So that has happened in the last year. What's coming up for Dulaang UP this semester, mid-year?
Now I think if I'm right, I think my colleagues are here too. We're releasing one production. It's entitled, am I allowed to say it now? Rosang Taba. This is directed by Professor Josefina Estrella. We're doing an online performance. I think they have shot in some locations. So it's a hybrid between live shooting live and pre-recorded videos. So we're releasing that now, and we're hoping that it will be a new model for us at the Dulaang Universidad ng Pilipinas, and also for we have continuous online performances in our classes, which is called the Dulaang Laboratorio Online. So our students and faculty members are collaborating in our classes, and I think we just finished the directing and practicum courses last night. Yeah.
Okay, last question. So how do you encourage collaboration among students? And based on your experience, how has it been collaborating with artists, not only here in the Philippines, but also abroad?
Okay. In my classes, I don't do much synchronous classes, but I open my Zoom during class hours because I encourage my students to meet up. I call this what do you call this, like a classmate to classmate interaction. So they get to talk about the readings on their own without without me as the facilitator of the class, because there's also a certain wisdom in that interaction, because some students find the faculty members very intimidating. Peer-to-peer interaction. That's the right term. Thank you, Randy. Peer-to-peer interaction, because there is wisdom in organizing those classes with students. Also, because my classes come from different colleges, I encourage them to partner with other colleges so that they have different skills and they get to learn from each other. Also, in collaborating with other artists, I like collaborating with people who have different skills from me. So I think that you should look for that. And now I'm looking for programmers and graphic designers, because in UP, most of my faculty members are doing online performances, but not all of us, are knowledgeable about graphic design and programming. So we're partnering sometimes with UPOU lecturers and teachers to help us with our online performances. So I think that you just have to, send a message, drop a line with any artist that and, just try, because I think that they are open to collaborations right now. And they like experimenting, and it's very easy. You just turn on the Zoom and you can collaborate. I think it's cheaper. It's a cheaper way of doing productions right now. So I encourage you to do it with your, to the artists that you've been, thinking of working with in the past years.
Thank you very much, Olive, for your responses and for sharing your experiences. By the way, if you're interested, Olive has a YouTube channel. It's Nieto. So if you want to check out her monovlogs there. We'd also like to take this moment to show Olive our appreciation with a certificate. So we'll request Dr. Choltis Diratiti to join us. Allow me to read the text. The ASEAN University Network on Culture and the Arts, Commission on Higher Education, and the Association of Cultural Offices in Philippine Education Institutions Incorporated present this certificate of appreciation to Assistant Professor Olivia Kristine D. Nieto for generously sharing her insights as a parallel speaker on the topic on online pedagogies in teaching theater in the new normal, under the theme Managing the Arts and Empowering Young Artists in the New Normal, Part 2, for the Aun-Ca Crosslight Online Learning Session Day 3, given virtually this 18th day of June 2021, signed by Ms. Glorife Samodio, Aun-Ca Chair, and Dr. Choltis Diratiti, AUN Executive Director.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Olive. And at this point, may we also request everyone to turn on their camera so we can capture this momentous event with Olive.
Okay, open your cameras. Smile. Thank you. Second page, open your cameras. Smile. Thank you. Third page, open your cameras. Smile. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Olive. Thank you, Dr. Choltis. Thank you, everyone. This wraps up day 3 of Crosslight online learning sessions. Please do not forget to answer the survey form or the evaluation form. We hope to see you next week for our last of 4 sessions. Those who wish to attend, please take note of the following reminders. First, please take time to tell us what you think of today's webinar by filling out the evaluation form, which you can access by scanning the QR code we're flashing on the screen. Second, we have extended the call for abstracts, films, and artworks for the exhibit for the Dialogues, Research Forum, and Crosslight Arts Festival on June 30, 5 p.m. Lastly, for all registered Day 4 participants, please expect an email from us within the next few days regarding the Zoom link and other necessary streaming links. For more information, visit or follow AUN's official website, www.aunsec.org, and its official Facebook page. Once again, this has been Ami Ramolete. Thank you for joining me for day 3 of Crosslight online learning sessions. Have an excellent day ahead. Bye.